That's good. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today about they are a manager, now what? In 2006, the phone rang and Michael was on the other end of the line and he was in a panic. You could hear it in his voice. He said, "I think my boss is gonna fire me. Can you help me?" And I said, "How do you know your boss is going to fire you?" And he said, "I've been a manager for a year. I just got my first annual review, and this is what it said. It says, Michael has met none of the criteria for being a manager at this company." I said, "What else?" "That's it," he said. "Well, Michael, what are the criteria for being a manager at your company?" "I don't know," he said. "That's just it. If I knew what the criteria were, I could meet them, but I don't know what they are. Can you help me?" We met the next day, and after getting to know him a little better, first thing I did was hand him a spiral notebook. And I said, "You know how in the trades we used to use duct tape to fix so many things?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Your position as a manager is your new trade. You were a pipe fitter. You're now a manager. It's a new trade, and you have to develop the skills for this trade at this level. That notebook is your next level of duct tape. Used properly, it will fix many things. From what you've told me, some of that is about communication, returning phone calls, scheduling crews, getting reports done on time. So this is what you do with that notebook. Anytime you have to do anything, return a phone call, get reports done, order supplies, schedule a crew, you write it on one line and the date. You skip 3 spaces and you write the next task. The 3 spaces are for you to fill in either next steps you need to take or the steps you did take to solve the problem. When you've solved a problem, you put one line through that so that it's always legible, so that you can always go back in years later and see what you did. Now, as to the criteria for success in your company, can we talk to your boss? No way. Actually, there was another word in there, but yeah, we're not going to go there. He said, "No way. We have to do this on our own." All right, it's going to take a level of discipline, the likes of which you've never seen if you want to do it, and there's a risk. If you try to figure out the criteria on your own, they may not coincide with your boss's criteria. Even riskier is this. Let's look at it from your boss's perspective. Your boss may not be clear on what your criteria are. And so he did the only thing he knew how to do, which was write one sentence. It may not be that he's a bad person, he's just a bad boss because he doesn't know any better. But here's what you do. Take that notebook or another one just like it and you go interview everybody at work. The people that you work for, the people that you work with, the people that surround you. You talk to your employees, you talk to your mentors, you talk to your peers, your coworkers, people at different levels, your boss's boss, you talk to HR, you talk to accounting, you talk to payroll, you talk to customer service, and you ask them this: what can I do, I being Michael, what can Michael do to help them be successful and not embarrass them? And you will get all kinds of answers. Then you'll have to sit down. This is where the discipline comes in. You have to sit down and figure out what's real, And then you have to make yourself a list of those criteria and a promise to yourself that you'll meet those criteria. With mentoring and coaching, Mike became a very successful manager, to the point where today he's now running a territory that spans 25% of the state of California. He told me the other day that he's training managers now, and the first thing he does is he sits them down and hands them a notebook with the instructions. It's not that Michael didn't know what to do. It's not that he couldn't be a manager, it's that he didn't know how to be a manager. He didn't understand the criteria for success in his job. The number one thing that people want on the job is to understand clearly what's required of them. And then they'll meet it or they won't. So in 2006, I created Blue Collar University so that I could help people like Michael and his boss better understand how to prepare, develop, and support blue-collar managers and supervisors. I'm now writing a book called They're a Manager, Now What? In the same vein. What I want to encourage people in the trades and the industries to do is this: to look at management. This may sound crazy, but look at management like a partnership. And what three things are required for a successful partnership? Agreement, accountability, and respect. And for those of you that may think that respect isn't as important as the other two, one of the first signs that a relationship is failing is when one party shows the other contempt. And contempt is the opposite of respect. So they're like three legs on a stool. If any one of them fails, the other two will topple immediately. The thing about agreement is this: it's based on clarity. It's based on being really clear on what's going to get done and who's going to do it. So how do you reach an agreement with another manager? You have a conversation. You have a discussion. It's a two-way thing. You can start by saying, this is what the company requires of you. But at some point in there, you have to allow them to say, okay, I see that, but here's what I see. Can we talk about that? You have that discussion long enough that you come to an agreement. All right, we agree. This is how we're going to do this. This is how you're going to run your department, and you don't have to come to me for every decision, because you don't want a messenger working for you. You want a manager working for you. So now you have an agreement. Once you have an agreement, you can now have accountability. Measurable, objective accountability. You can manage by facts. There are two parts to accountability in its simplest form. One is making the decision to hold somebody accountable, and the other is actually holding them accountable, right? When you have an agreement, it's easier to do both. When you have an agreement, you can say, I'm going to hold them accountable, and here's how you do that. You walk up to them and you say, can we have a conversation? Sure. We had an agreement. What happened there? See how that works? Agreement, accountability, foster respect. In 2015, I was working with a safety committee for an oil field service company that spanned the United States. And they had a safety training program. They had the training curricula in place, but the training wasn't getting done. So we had a conference call with the field supervisors and managers, and we said, do you agree it needs to be done? Yes. Why isn't it getting done? It's very difficult. Our people are everywhere. Electronic training doesn't work real well for them. because the way their brains work, but also because by the time they get home at night or get back to the motel, they're just exhausted from working 10 and 12-hour days. Often there's no internet where they are, so we've just given up. I said, let me remind you of an incident that happened a couple of months ago, where a man nearly got decapitated when a piece of pipeline that weighed as much as half a Volkswagen Beetle missed his head by that much. Now, imagine the phone ringing at 3 a.m. and you hear a voice that says, "We've had an incident." Whether or not that person was injured, those words are bone-chilling. And they will wake you up faster than any intravenous espresso you've ever had. But imagine further, if you have to next call your boss, then you have to call the news media. But before you call the news media, who do you have to call? The wife, the children, the mother, the father, whoever the nearest relative is to them. And how do you think they're going to feel when later, in a court of law, their attorney asks you, did you give them the safety training? And your answer is, it was too hard. A conversation ensued after that on the telephone, and they came to an agreement amongst themselves. This is what we're going to train, in the order we're going to train it, when we're going to have it trained by, when we're going to retrain. And when we were done, there was an agreement in place. Several months later, I checked back in on the records, and true to form, some managers had the training done. They were squared away. Others, not so much. What did the safety director do? Made a phone call. We had an agreement. What happened? Right? So, as managers of managers, if you don't want your blue-collar managers and supervisors to be a statistic, one of the 60% of managers that fail within 24 months of assuming the position, then I encourage you to look at management as a partnership and have conversations and create agreement, hold them accountable and be held accountable, and do it respectfully. Thank you.